What's going on, bottom line viewers? It's Mitch back here with another NFL draft needs video and breakdown. In this video, the NFC East, where I play GM and address all the needs for your favorite team and talk about the top needs for the NFC East entering the 2022 NFL Draft. If that sounds exciting, don't forget to spike the like button and subscribe for more NFL content where I cover all 32 NFL teams, including more NFL draft content just like this. Let's begin with the top dog in the division from a year ago, which is the Dallas Cowboys. And I understand Cowboys fans are a bit frustrated right now, a bit on edge right now. They probably can't wait for the draft because they want to see their team actually add players and not lose players this offseason. So I totally get it. But looking at the Dallas Cowboys, I view them as a football team that is going to have an opportunity to replenish some positions that they have not replenished in quite some time. I'm discussing the offensive line right here because you've lost two starters this offseason at guard and at tackle. Not to mention that your two best players are older on your offensive line. So going with the tackle, going with the guard early in the draft is going to be probably the way I would go and the way that the Cowboys go here. It's not going to be the sexiest picks in the world, but it's probably going to be effective for you. Cowboys have typically hit with offensive lineman picks in the past, but also the Cowboys have been at their best with a strong offensive line. And I know that the Cowboys statistically were kind of strong in that front last year, but I certainly saw regression on that front. Their ability to move people off the line of scrimmage in the run game was severely lacking last year in the biggest of moments versus the best of defenses. Just look at that 49ers game, for example. On top of that, I look at the defensive side of the football and the push in the run game in the interior as being something they need to upgrade. Now, the Cowboys have already added some younger players in recent years at this position, so they're hoping for probably some growth from those younger players, but I'm not sure you've found that answer. So if they do want to go with an interior D lineman that can disrupt and make a difference for Dan Quinn's defense, then they might go with that direction as well. I look at perimeter corner on the opposite side of Trayvon Diggs as being a huge need because that's where teams really picked on the Cowboys in the secondary. That's really a piece away from being a complete secondary right there. And I understand you also spent a second rounder and I think also a third rounder on a cornerback last year. So maybe one of those two guys can fulfill that spot, but we didn't see much of those younger players that were picked last year in the starting lineup. Now, I don't think edge is much of an issue on your football team as you brought in Dante Fowler to help replace Randy Gregory as a pure pass rusher. I thought that was a great under-the-radar move. Dorrance Armstrong is still developing, and I think he's a solid player. Terrell Basham is a guy I really like who's underrated. And of course, you've got DeMarcus Lawrence and then also Parsons, who's going to play pass reps as well. So then you think about, okay, if Parsons moves to edge in certain reps, then linebacker becomes a concern. But you still got Leighton Vander Esch, you got Jabril Cox. So those are two guys that can play starting reps and play a role in your defense. Curse, Hooker, Donovan Wilson are a 3 safety look that you can give certain offenses. And obviously, Curse has that bigger body where he can move more towards in the box, especially in sub-package situations. So I think your safety position is also solid. It's not elite, but I think it's pretty good. So I would view corner and interior defensive lines as areas that you could definitely upgrade on top of that offensive line, as I suggested. You're good at tight end, fine at running back. Wide receiver in the top 2 is good, but you're going to be looking to add some depth in the draft. James Washington was a vet that you signed. Noah Brown is also on the roster. But I think that you probably look to add a later round wide receiver as potentially a developmental type of guy as maybe the third option, maybe the fourth option. I could also see Dallas potentially down the road this offseason signing a veteran receiver to come in and play the slot. I would certainly look at that or play on the outside regardless. They're going to look for a veteran receiver down the road. So I think the Cowboys, if they can hit in this draft, they're going to be right back where they were a year ago. But if they miss with some of these picks, I could actually see the Cowboys dropping a little bit this year just due to some of the losses that they've had on both sides of the football and a little bit of regression coming from certain aspects of your football team. But I think Dallas does have a lot of talent, and they do this year have some pretty clear holes that need to be addressed. But if they can do that, they can definitely have another successful year in 2022. Cowboys fans, let me know where you want your team to address, which positions you want your team to address this off season. Let's move to the next team, which is the New York Giants, one of my favorite teams to watch in this draft, as they have 2 picks inside the top 10, and not just the top 10, but I believe the top 7. The New York Giants clearly, obviously, have big needs on the offensive line. Big needs on the offensive line. Right tackle is specifically the area where I view them going in that direction with the 5th or the 7th pick. Whichever one, probably the 5th pick. But regardless, they're going to pick a right tackle, in my opinion, early to partner with Andrew Thomas on the opposite side. And then you look at some of their additions. Mark Lewinsky is going to be there for a while at right guard. John Feliciano can play center or guard, most likely center this year for you. And you also brought in Max Garcia, who can start and has started on other teams like the Cardinals in the past. But I could see you picking a developmental guard at some point in the draft, 3rd, 4th round. Probably not 2nd if you're spending a high priority pick on the left tackle in the 1st, but you could see 2nd round. I wouldn't be shocked by that, as you have an early 2nd rounder as well. So tight end could be a position that you also address in the mid rounds to help out that weaponry unit, but you've got plenty of receivers. I don't view receiver as a need. I don't view running back as a need, with one more year of Saquon likely being there, and then also bringing in Matt Breida. Interior defensive line is strong. I don't think that's a need. I think edge is a bigger need. I think you could go edge early in the draft, but I wouldn't be shocked if the Giants actually went with a corner early in the draft and then an edge in the 2nd or the 3rd round, given the style of Don Martindale's defense and what he believes in. This is a team that likely believes in coverage over pass rush. This is typically the way Martindale has situated his defensive scheme. He loves corners. He loves to blitz. He loves to use athletes to be able to get to the quarterback. And I think that with the Giants, they're going to try to replicate that. Try to get some push from their interior defensive linemen, similar to the Ravens, and then cause havoc with some athletes. I think they can find a good athlete to get to the quarterback in the 2nd round, and then potentially get a upper echelon corner to rather partner with Adoree Jackson and James Bradberry for a year, or replace James Bradberry, trade James Bradberry. You could also use some safety depth as well, but there are some free agents that you could look to add as well down the road. But the way that I see the structure going for the Giants is right tackle and corner in the 1st round, and then in the 2nd round, probably a guard or an edge player, and then you could probably go guard or edge in the 2nd or the 3rd. That's kind of how I see it. And then the rest of the draft, I see safety, I see potentially linebacker, and tight end also being in the mix there for the rest of the draft. But that's how I view the Giants. I think they're in a really good spot to add some really talented players in this draft and to address some of their biggest needs. Some of the best players in this draft happen to be at their biggest needs, which is really, really nice. Tackle, corner, and edge. So that's perfect for G-Men fans. Let me know, Giants fans, what you guys think in the comment section below. And let's move to the Philadelphia Eagles, who also have multiple picks in the 1st round. They did trade one of their picks to the New Orleans Saints. The Eagles pretty obviously just need perimeter talent. For the most part, they need another wide receiver to complement Devontae Smith. I've said this for a long time. Jalen Reagor's not the answer. He's not the guy. I could see him actually being traded in this draft, I should say. They brought in Zach Pascal. They have somebody like Greg Ward, who those guys are kind of like possession receivers, number 4 types. Quez Watkins is probably your number 3 speedy guy. So you're looking for a number 2, in all honesty. John Hightower also has some speed as well. But I could see them going with a receiver in the 1st round. I could see them going with a receiver in the 2nd round. Regardless, I could see them going with a receiver high in this draft. Now, we look at the offensive line. I think that is actually an under-the-radar need at guard, because Jason Kelce is going to retire after this season, most likely, which means that Landon Dickerson will likely take the center position, which means that a guard is going to be up for grabs next year. So knowing the Eagles, they love to address the line of scrimmage. So they usually address that a year before they have to. I could see them going with a guard or some sort of interior offensive lineman in this draft early. I could also see them going with a cornerback, but I do view them as a team that doesn't typically like to spend on corner early. So I could see them going with a corner in the second or the third, more so than the first. They could also use a linebacker. They could also maybe look to the future at defensive tackle with Fletcher Cox, just like Jason Kelce, probably only being on the team for another season. So it's not a short-term ad, but it could be a long-term ad, and that's the way that the Eagles typically view their picks. So I think Philadelphia is going to, in the first round, likely pick a receiver and then also probably go towards D-line or O-line in the first round. Then in the second round, I think they could go with a corner or a linebacker. And then from there, you're just filling in the depth at safety, maybe another corner, maybe another receiver. You could certainly see that happen, but that's how I view the Philadelphia Eagles. They're going to be having one eye on the now and one eye on the future, as they should, but they're going to be very intriguing to watch because they have so many draft picks to work with, especially those couple in the first round. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about the Eagles and the plan for Philadelphia in the 2022 NFL Draft. And the final team in the NFC East is the Washington Commanders. The Commanders also could use a wide receiver. We've talked about wide receiver with 3 out of the 4 teams. Wide receiver is a position that every team needs 3 good players at. I just truly believe you need 3 good receivers to win in this league, and the Washington football team maybe has 1. They've got Terry McLaurin. I'll say they do have 1. I don't know if they maybe have 2. Curtis Samuel is inconsistent with health. Brown has promise. I liked him coming out last year, but didn't show much in his first year. Same with Antonio Gandy-Golden, hasn't shown much since being drafted in the 4th in 2020, and Cam Sims is he's just there. So I think Washington needs a receiver. They need another difference maker for Carson Wentz. If you're going to go all in with Carson Wentz this year, support him with some weaponry. You can properly utilize Curtis Samuel as a 3. I think that's just what he is. He's a 3. He's kind of like this hybrid playmaker, third receiver, as well as his health being questionable at times. That's what you want to use him as. Terry McLaurin is your number 1. So looking for another rookie who can become a number 2, maybe a jump ball receiver like Drake London in this draft could be the answer for sure. But looking at the offensive line, I think they're actually pretty underrated. They replaced Brandon Scherf with Andrew Norwell. They have decent depth as well on the O-line, so I'm not too concerned with their offensive line. I don't think they're going to spend high priority on the offensive line. Maybe they look for depth later in the draft. Tight end is solid with Logan Thomas. Carson Wentz is the quarterback. Then you've got Antonio Gibson and J.D. McKissick, who's back, and also Jarrett Patterson, who I like at running back. So pretty much on offense, wide receiver is the only real big need. So most of the picks are probably going to go towards defense. Now, the Washington Commanders do not have a lot of draft picks here because of what they did with Carson Wentz, and they trade a couple thirds for Carson Wentz. So I think they're going to look at potentially interior defensive line, and then also linebacker, safety. I think they're not going to use a high priority pick on corner because I think they like Benjamin Saint whatever. Sorry, Washington fans. St. Just, is it? They picked him in the 3rd round last year, and I do think they like him quite a bit. So he could play on the outside opposite William Jackson, and Kendall Fuller is going to play in the nickel, of course. So, and also Danny Johnson showed some promise last year. So you've got 4 corners that I think the team likes. So I don't think corner is a huge priority for your team. But I do think safety could be. Cameron Curl's solid. Bobby McCain was good last year. Jeremy Reeves has had his ups and downs. I think safety, especially given the age of Bobby McCain, you could look for a younger player at that spot. As well as linebacker, where I still think you're a little shaky, even by adding a first rounder a year ago in Davis. I think you could still use another player at that spot, especially given Ron Rivera is big into linebackers, being a linebacker himself in his past. I could see you going with another linebacker this year. So the way that I view it and the structure for this team, Washington, I think in the first round you're going wide receiver or safety. And then I think you're looking for potentially depth on linebacker, depth on D-line, depth on O-line. That's pretty much the way I see your draft going. You're going to have a top pick in the first round, which is going to address one of your bigger needs. And then you're probably looking the rest of the draft at some depth at some positions of need. Overall, though, I would be surprised if Washington did not use their first pick on a wide receiver or a safety. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. That is the NFC East. Let me know your thoughts on my thoughts on the NFC East in the comment section below and which positions you want your team to draft this year. It's Mitch. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video. Peace.